They told my daughter to apologize for being hurt. Her bruises were called a misunderstanding and I was labeled dramatic. But when I saw the video, him twisting her arm while her grandmother watched in silence, I knew this wasn't just family drama. It was abuse hidden behind money and power. The bruise on my daughter's arm told a story her words couldn't. Standing in the Fauner's pristine living room, I watched Judith force Ella to apologize to the boy who'd hurt her. She provoked him, Judith said, with that practiced smile that had intimidated me for years. Something crystallized in that moment, a quiet rage I'd never allowed myself to feel. They'd always seen me as malleable. Claire, the illustrator who made pretty pictures and kept the peace. But they'd forgotten something crucial. Even the gentlest creatures become dangerous when their children are threatened. I walked out without a word that day, my daughter's small hand in mine. The Fauners thought they'd won, as they always had. They had no idea that silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of war drums gathering in the distance. The autumn chill had settled early over our small Oregon town, painting the maple trees outside my kitchen window in shades of amber and crimson. I sipped my coffee, watching my 8-year-old daughter Ella meticulously pack her overnight bag for the weekend at her grandmother's estate. Her movements were careful, deliberate, almost hesitant. "Don't forget Mr. Whiskers," I reminded her, nodding toward the well-loved stuffed cat sitting on her bed. Ella nodded silently and tucked the plush toy between her folded pajamas. "I'm Claire Morgan, freelance illustrator and full-time single mom. My life revolves around deadlines, colored pencils scattered across my desk, and making sure Ella feels secure, despite the fractured family situation we navigate. Since my divorce from Ethan Whitmore 3 years ago, I've walked a tightrope, trying to maintain some semblance of family connection for Ella's sake, while setting boundaries with people who never thought I was good enough. Do I have to go to Grandma Judith's?" Ella asked, her voice small. "Can I just stay with you this weekend? I could help with your new project." I knelt beside her, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Honey, I know it's not always fun, but family is important. Besides, your cousins will be there. It's cousin weekend, remember?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "Yeah." That hesitation should have been my first warning. The Fauner estate sat on 3 acres at the edge of town, a sprawling testament to old money and careful image management. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed Judith standing on the front steps. Her silver hair was perfectly coiffed, arms crossed as she appraised my 10-year-old Honda with thinly veiled disdain. "We were beginning to wonder if you've forgotten," Judith said as we approached. Her smile was tight. Her gaze swept over Ella's jeans and sneakers. "The other children are already dressed for dinner." "We're right on time, Judith," I replied evenly, checking my watch. 5 o'clock as agreed. Judith ushered Ella inside with a hand on her shoulder. "Well, hurry along then. Liam has been asking when you'd arrive." At the mention of Liam, I noticed Ella's shoulders tense. Liam was Judith's golden boy, her other son's child. A 10-year-old with a dazzling smile for adults, and I was beginning to suspect something else entirely for other children. "Is Ethan here?" I asked, following them into the marble-floored entryway. "He's on a call," Judith replied dismissively. "Business doesn't stop for weekend visits, Claire." "Of course not." My ex-husband had always prioritized the family investment firm over everything else, including his marriage and his daughter. In the 3 years since our divorce, Ethan's actual time with Ella had dwindled to these obligatory family gatherings and the occasional lunch, when he remembered. From the back patio came the sound of children playing. I glanced through the French doors and saw several kids running around the manicured lawn. Liam stood apart, watching 2 younger children on the swing set. Something about his posture made me uneasy. "Maybe I should say hello to everyone before I go," I suggested. Judith's hand fluttered dismissively. "They're fine. Children need to learn to socialize without parents hovering." As if on cue, I heard a sharp cry followed by tearful protests. Through the glass, I saw a small boy, one of Ethan's cousin's kids, on the ground, while Liam stood over him. "Liam!" Judith called sharply through the open window. "Help Tyler up. Now!" Then turning to me with a tight smile, she added, "Boys will be boys. Some children just need firmer hands than others to learn proper behavior." The comment hung in the air between us, its implication clear. My parenting was the soft kind. The lesser kind. I knelt to hug Ella goodbye. "Call me if you need anything, okay? I'm just a phone call away." Her arms tightened around my neck. "Can't you stay? Just for a little while?" "Ella," Judith interjected, "your cousins are waiting. Your mother has her own plans, I'm sure." I didn't, actually. My weekend would be filled with work and quiet worry. But I'd learned long ago that arguing with Judith only made things worse. I'll see you Sunday evening, sweetheart. We'll make brownies when you get home. Ella nodded, her eyes downcast as Judith guided her toward the patio doors. Just before they stepped outside, I heard Judith murmur, "Now remember what we talked about, no tattling about little disagreements. Family handles things privately." That knot in my stomach tightened, but I pushed the feeling aside. I'd spent years doubting my instincts in this house, years of Ethan telling me I was overreacting, overthinking, so I smiled, waved, and left my daughter behind. For 2 days I buried myself in illustrations for a children's book about brave forest animals. I checked my phone constantly, but Ella didn't call. By Sunday afternoon, I couldn't wait any longer. I arrived at the Faulkner estate a full hour before the agreed pickup time. The front door was locked, but I knew the family would be gathered in the back living room or patio, as they always were on Sunday afternoons. I walked around to the side gate, entered the code I still remembered, and made my way quietly across the stone pathway. Voices drifted through the open patio doors, Judith's commanding tone, a child's sob, and then words that stopped me cold. "You need to apologize to Liam right now, Ella. You provoked him. Boys don't just act that way for no reason." I stepped through the doorway. The scene before me burned into my memory. Ella sitting on the floor, holding her arm against her chest. Liam standing over her, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. Judith kneeling beside Ella, her hand gripping my daughter's shoulder. "Say you're sorry for upsetting him," Judith insisted. Ella looked up, saw me, and her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, what happened?" My voice was deadly quiet. Judith straightened, her composure never faltering. "Just a little disagreement. Ella took Liam's game without asking and he got upset. We're resolving it." I crossed the room in 3 steps and gently helped Ella to her feet. "Let me see your arm, sweetheart." She reluctantly extended it. A red mark wrapped around her forearm, the clear imprint of fingers. "It was an accident," Judith said smoothly. "Children play rough sometimes. Ella needs to learn that her actions have consequences." I gathered Ella's belongings with one hand, keeping the other wrapped firmly around her trembling shoulders. My mind raced with all the things I wanted to say, the accusations I wanted to hurl. But Ella's small, shaking body kept me grounded. "We're leaving," I said simply. "Claire, there's no need for drama." Judith's voice hardened, but I turned to her, cutting her off with a look. A look that silenced even the formidable Margaret. "We're done here." As we walked out, Liam called after us. "Bye, crybaby." Judith didn't correct him. In the car, Ella stared out the window, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. It wasn't until we were home, safe in our small but warm kitchen, that the whole story spilled out. "It's not the first time," she whispered, her voice catching. "Liam pinches me when no one's looking. He pushed me down the last time too." Her voice dropped even lower. "Last month, he locked me in the coat closet. For almost an hour." Each word was like a knife to my heart. "Why didn't you tell me, baby?" "Grandma Judith said I shouldn't be a tattletale. She said I need to be stronger. And stop provoking him. Dad said the same thing when I tried to tell him." I held her close, fury and heartbreak warring in my chest. My mind raced. All those times she'd been reluctant to go for visits. The way she'd grown quieter after weekends with the Faulkners. How could I have missed it? That night, after Ella was asleep, I documented everything. I photographed the marks on her arm. I wrote down every detail she'd shared. And I made a promise to her and to myself. Never again would I ignore my instincts. Never again would I let anyone hurt my child and call it normal. The next morning, I called my friend Rachel, one of the best family lawyers in the county. "I need your help," I told her. "And I need you to tell me honestly if I'm overreacting." After hearing everything, Rachel's response was immediate. "You're not overreacting, Claire. You're finally reacting." Later, Margaret received a visit from Child Services. "It was just the beginning. You have absolutely no proof of any of this," Ethan's voice crackled through my phone speaker, cold and dismissive. "Liam is a normal, active boy. Ella has always been sensitive. Like you." I stared at the photo spread across my kitchen table, the fading bruise on Ella's arm, the scratch on her back she'd shown me the night before. "This isn't about sensitivity, Ethan. It's about safety. It's about you trying to drive a wedge between Ella and her family," he countered. "Mother told me how you stormed out yesterday, how you're blowing a simple children's disagreement into some dramatic crusade." I closed my eyes, fighting the familiar pull of self-doubt they'd been so good at instilling in me. "Your mother forced our daughter to apologize to a boy who hurt her. Tell me how that's okay." "Liam's just a boy, Claire. Boys play rough sometimes. Ella needs to toughen up a bit." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, memories washing over me. How many times during our marriage had Ethan minimized my feelings? How often had Judith stepped in to explain why I was wrong, too emotional, too much? I'd spent years shrinking myself to fit into their world. And now they expected Ella to do the same. Not anymore. The next morning, I sat with Ella's school counselor, Ms. Winters, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Ella's been quieter lately, she confirmed, reviewing her notes. Her teacher mentioned she stopped raising her hand in class about 2 months ago. And she's been drawing some concerning pictures during art therapy. She showed me several drawings, dark scribbles overwhelming smaller figures, a small girl locked in what looked like a box, while a larger figure stood guard outside. Has she talked about these? I asked, my throat tightening. Not directly. But when I asked her about feeling safe, she said she feels safe at home with you and at school. Ms. Winters paused meaningfully. She didn't mention feeling safe at her father's family's home. By the time we finished talking, Ms. Winters had made her position clear. I'll need to file a mandatory report, Ms. Wren. What you're describing, combined with what we've observed, warrants investigation. That evening, I started a journal, documenting everything I could remember from the past year. Every reluctance Ella had shown before visits. Every change in behavior afterward. I dug through my phone for old photos, looking for visual changes in Ella's demeanor around her father's family. The evidence, once I began looking, was heartbreaking. In every photo with the Faulkners, Ella stood slightly apart. Her smile was tight. Her body angled away from Liam. How had I missed it? We often see what we're conditioned to accept, Rachel told me when I showed her everything. We were sitting in her office, surrounded by case files and law books. The Faulkners have spent years training you to doubt yourself. I let her down, I whispered. No, Rachel said firmly. You're standing up for her now. That's what matters. She helped me organize everything, the photographs, the school reports, the detailed accounts from Ella, carefully and gently collected without leading questions. Document everything, Rachel advised. Every call, every text, every encounter. The Faulkners will fight back, and they'll fight dirty. She was right. 2 days after Child Services visited the Faulkner estate, the backlash began. First came the text from Judith. I'm disappointed in your tactics, Claire. Bringing strangers into family matters shows your true character. Then the call from Ethan's lawyer, suggesting that my unfounded accusations indicated parental alienation. A threat so thinly veiled it might as well have been transparent. That night, as Ella slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, my phone lit up with Ethan's name. You've gone too far, he said without preamble. Mother is beside herself. Do you have any idea how this looks for the family? I'm not concerned with how it looks, I replied. I'm concerned with what happened. Nothing happened. His voice rose sharply. Liam and Ella had a normal childhood spat. You're turning it into something perverse because you've always been jealous of my family. I let his words wash over me, no longer feeling the sting they once carried. Ella told her counselor everything, Ethan. Not just about this weekend. About the closet. About the pinching. About being told she deserves it. Silence stretched between us. If you push this, he finally said, I'll file for full custody. I'll tell the court you're mentally unstable. That you're poisoning our daughter against her family. My mother knows every family court judge in this county. Then it's a good thing, I said, steady and cold, we're not filing in this county. I repeated what Rachel had told me earlier. Goodbye, Ethan. The next week passed in a blur of appointments. Ella with her new therapist. Me with Rachel. Both of us together with a family advocate assigned by the court. I took time off work, letting some deadlines slide, to focus entirely on protecting my daughter. Ms. Wren, Ella's teacher, Ms. Laura, caught me after school one afternoon. She glanced around to ensure we were alone. I want you to know that I've noticed the changes in Ella too. If you need a statement for any proceedings, I'm willing to provide one. Thank you, I said, surprised and grateful. That would mean a lot. She hesitated. There's something else. Last fall, after a weekend with her father's family, Ella drew a picture during free time. I found it concerning enough that I kept it. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I thought you should have this. The drawing showed a small girl, clearly Ella, huddled in a dark space, while a boy stood outside, his face drawn with an exaggerated smile. Written across the top in Ella's careful handwriting, the bad place. That night, I added the drawing to my growing file and received an unexpected email. My name is Hannah Blake, it began. I worked as a nanny for the Faulkner family 2 years ago. I've heard through mutual connections about what's happening with your daughter. I've seen what they're capable of and I'll talk. The cafe was nearly empty when Hannah Blake slid into the booth across from me. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with anxious eyes that darted toward the door every few minutes. I signed an NDA when I left, she said without preamble, keeping her voice low. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not after hearing what happened to your daughter. How did you find out about Ella? I asked. Small town. Hannah shrugged. Plus, I still babysit for the Hendersons, who are friends with your neighbor. Word gets around. She pulled out her phone. I kept everything even though they told me to delete it all when they fired me. She showed me a series of text messages from Judith, complaints about a child who had visited the estate being too sensitive and causing problems for Liam. The language was eerily similar to what had been said about Ella. Cash locked a little girl in the basement during a birthday party, Hannah explained. When she finally got out and told her parents, Judith insisted the girl had gone down there herself and gotten scared. They fired me the next day for allowing it to happen, even though I was upstairs helping with the cake when it occurred. Did you believe the girl? I asked. Hannah's expression hardened. I knew she was telling the truth. Liam had done similar things before, breaking toys and blaming other children, pushing kids when adults weren't looking. But Judith and the whole family protected him. They called it high spirits or claimed the other children were lying to get attention. By the time our meeting ended, Hannah had agreed to provide a sworn statement to Rachel. It wasn't conclusive evidence, but it established a pattern and, more importantly, showed that Ella wasn't the first. The following morning, I received a certified letter from Ethan's attorney. He was indeed filing for full custody, claiming I was emotionally unstable and coaching Ella to make false accusations against family members. The hearing was set for the following month. They're moving fast, Rachel observed when I called her. They want to overwhelm you. Make you feel like you can't win. Classic intimidation tactics. Will it work? I asked, fear tightening around my chest. Could they really take Ella? Not if I have anything to say about it, Rachel replied firmly. Remember, we've moved this to a different jurisdiction. Judith's connections don't reach as far as she thinks. Still, the Faulkner's campaign was relentless. Ethan's sister called mutual friends, painting me as vindictive and unhinged. Judith reached out to the parents of Ella's classmates, suggesting playdates be canceled because of our difficult family situation. Even my landlord received a call, implying I might become an unstable tenant. They're trying to isolate us, I realized aloud during one of our strategy sessions with Rachel. It's what abusers do, she agreed. Cut off support systems. Make the target feel alone. But they've miscalculated, Claire. You're not alone. She was right. For every person who pulled away, someone else stepped forward. Ms. Laura rallied a quiet group of teachers who had observed Ella's changes. My clients expressed support, with several offering to testify to my character and work ethic. Even my typically reserved parents flew in from Arizona, ready to stand beside us through it all. Ella slowly began to emerge from her shell. In therapy, she found her voice, expressing feelings she'd been taught to suppress. Her nightmares decreased, and she started drawing bright, hopeful pictures again. You're doing the right thing, Mom, she told me one night as I tucked her in. That simple validation from my 8-year-old daughter brought tears to my eyes. 2 weeks before the custody hearing, Rachel called with news that changed everything. Remember how Hannah mentioned the little girl Liam locked in the basement? I found her family, the Watsons. They were paid off? A hefty settlement. With ironclad confidentiality clauses. But they're willing to break it to help Ella. Why would they risk that? I asked, stunned. Because Mrs. Watson still regrets taking the money and staying quiet. She said her daughter had nightmares for a year afterward. Rachel paused. There's more. The Watsons weren't the first family to be paid off. There was an incident at a private camp 2 years ago, another boy Liam hurt. Those parents took the money too. The revelation sent shockwaves through our case. With Rachel's guidance, we amended our filings to include this new information. The court appointed a guardian ad litem, an independent advocate to represent Ella's interests and investigate the claims from all sides. Predictably, the Faulkners fought back harder than ever. Judith gave an interview to the local paper, portraying Liam as the victim of malicious rumors, and herself as a concerned grandmother trying to protect her family from my vendetta. The article included a carefully staged photo of Liam looking angelic beside his grandmother. But the comments section told a different story. People who knew the Faulkners began sharing their own observations, nothing specific enough for legal action, but enough to create doubt about the family's pristine image. Public opinion is shifting, Rachel noted. People are beginning to question the Follner's narrative. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. During a court-mandated family therapy session, a last attempt at reconciliation before the hearing, Liam's mask slipped. The therapist had asked each person to express their feelings about the situation. When it was Liam's turn, he looked directly at Ella and said, "She's a liar. She's always been a liar. And when this is over, she'll be sorry." The threat hung in the air, so explicit that even Ethan looked uncomfortable. The therapist immediately documented the interaction. The guardian ad litem, who was present, requested an emergency hearing. That night, as I tucked Ella into bed, my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. When I opened it, my hands began to shake. It was a video clip, security footage from inside the Follner estate. It clearly showed Liam pushing Ella to the ground and twisting her arm, while Judith stood in the doorway, watching, doing nothing to intervene. The message below read, "Judith had these cameras installed last year but forgot they saved to the cloud. I can't come forward. But I couldn't let them win. Good luck." I immediately forwarded it to Rachel, who responded within minutes. "This changes everything. Call me first thing tomorrow." As I sat beside Ella's bed, watching her peaceful sleep, I felt the first real hope in weeks. The Follners had built their empire on silence and fear. But cracks were forming in their foundation. And through those cracks, the truth was finally breaking through. The security footage played on Judge Catherine Rhodes's computer screen. The silence in her chambers was broken only by the soft ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Rachel and I sat across from her desk, barely breathing. We watched Liam push Ella down, twist her arm, and walk away laughing while Judith stood in the doorway, witnessing everything. When the video ended, Judge Harlow removed her reading glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "How did you obtain this footage, Miss Carson?" she asked. Rachel straightened. "It was sent anonymously to my client, Your Honor. We believe it's from the Follner's home security system." "Anonymously?" The judge's tone was skeptical. "And you have no idea who might have access to the system?" "No, Your Honor," I answered truthfully. "But the metadata confirms it was recorded on the Sunday in question. And the faces are clearly visible." Judge Harlow tapped her pen against her legal pad. "This changes the complexion of the case significantly. I'm ordering an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I want all parties present." Outside the courthouse, Rachel squeezed my hand. "This is it, Claire. The footage corroborates Ella's account exactly. Even the Follners can't explain this away." I wanted to believe her. But years of being undermined by the Follners had taught me caution. "They'll try," I murmured. "Judith always has an explanation." "Not this time," Rachel said with quiet confidence. "Not with Judge Harlow. She's known for protecting children above all else." That night, with Ella staying safely at my parents' house, away from the storm brewing around her, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. For weeks I'd been keeping a private journal online, documenting our journey through this nightmare. That night, after careful consideration, I made it public. I didn't name names. I didn't share the video. I simply told our story. How a mother discovered her child was being abused by a family member. How the powerful family closed ranks. And how the system could either protect or fail the most vulnerable among us. I titled it, "When They Tell You to Apologize for Being Hurt." Then I posted it anonymously on a parenting forum. Before going to bed. By morning it had been shared thousands of times. "Did you see this?" Rachel texted me, sending a link to a local news site. My story had been picked up by a reporter who specialized in family court cases. The headline read, "Anonymous Mother Fights Wealthy Family Over Alleged Child Abuse." My heart raced as I read through the article. Though no names were used, anyone who knew the Follners would recognize the description. And the reporter had done additional research. The reporter had begun interviewing child psychologists about the dynamics described in the blog post, adding context about how financial privilege often influenced family court outcomes. "I didn't expect this," I told Rachel as we met outside the courthouse. The morning was crisp, the sky a clear, hopeful blue that seemed at odds with the tension of the day ahead. "Sometimes the truth needs witnesses," she replied. "You gave people permission to see what often happens behind closed doors." Inside the courtroom was more crowded than I expected. The Follners had arrived in force, Judith stone-faced and elegant in a tailored suit, Ethan looking uncomfortable but determined, and their lawyer, Harrison Wells, a man known for representing the town's elite in their most delicate matters. I was surprised to see Liam present, sitting beside his grandmother in a blue blazer that made him look like a miniature businessman. He caught my eye and smirked. The gesture chilled me. Judge Harlow entered, and the proceedings began with a formality that belied the emotional charge in the room. Wells spoke first, immediately objecting to the video evidence. Your Honor, this footage was obtained illegally and should be inadmissible. Furthermore, we have reason to believe it has been edited to present an incomplete picture of events. Judge Harlow raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting the video has been doctored, Mr. Wells? Not doctored, Your Honor, but selectively edited. What happened before this incident is crucial context. What context would justify an adult watching a child assault another child? Rachel countered, her voice calm but razor-sharp. Wells ignored her, addressing the judge directly. Mrs. Faulkner was just entering the room and hadn't fully assessed the situation. These children have a history of rough play. What looks concerning to an outsider is simply part of their normal interaction. Judge Harlow's expression remained neutral. I'd like to hear from Mrs. Faulkner directly on this matter. Judith took the stand with practiced grace, smoothing her skirt as she sat. Your Honor, I love both my grandson and my granddaughter dearly. What you saw in that video was unfortunate, but it was the culmination of an afternoon of provocation. Ella had been teasing Liam, taking his belongings, challenging him. My blood boiled at the lies, but Rachel's hand on my arm kept me seated. And your response to seeing your grandson push and twist the arm of your granddaughter, Judge Harlow asked, was to have her apologize to him? Judith didn't flinch. I believe children need to understand their role in conflicts. Ella needed to recognize that her actions have consequences. So you're teaching her that being physically assaulted is a natural consequence of what you call teasing? For the first time, Judith looked uncomfortable. That's not what I meant, Your Honor. Then what did you mean, Mrs. Faulkner? Before Judith could answer, the courtroom door opened. A middle-aged woman I'd never seen before slipped in and took a seat in the back row. Something about her entrance caught Judge Harlow's attention. Let's hear from Ella's court-appointed counselor, the judge said, shifting gears. Dr. Emily, please take the stand. Dr. Emily Morgan, a child psychologist who had been working with Ella for the past 3 weeks, approached the witness box. After being sworn in, she spoke with quiet authority. Ella exhibits clear signs of anxiety specific to interactions with her cousin Liam and her grandmother, Judith. She has described multiple incidents of bullying and physical aggression from Liam and, perhaps more disturbingly, a pattern of adults dismissing her concerns and forcing her to accept the abuse as normal. Objection. Wells interrupted. Dr. Emily is presenting hearsay from a child who may have been coached. Your Honor, Dr. Emily responded before the judge could rule. I've been evaluating children in traumatic situations for 15 years. I'm well versed in recognizing coaching. Ella's accounts have been consistent, detailed, and accompanied by emotional responses that cannot be faked by a child her age. Judge Harlow nodded. Objection overruled. Please continue, Doctor. Dr. Emily described how Ella had created a sand tray scene during therapy, a recognized technique for children to express emotions they can't verbalize. She created a scene with a small rabbit surrounded by wolves, with adult wolves watching but not intervening. When I asked about it, she said, "This is how it feels at Grandma's house." The testimony continued with Dr. Emily explaining the potential long-term impacts of normalized abuse on a child's development. As she spoke, I noticed Ethan shifting uncomfortably in his seat, refusing to meet my eyes. Next came Hannah Blake, the former nanny who testified about what she had witnessed during her employment with the Faulkners. Despite Wells' attempts to discredit her as a disgruntled ex-employee, her accounts aligned too closely with the established pattern to be dismissed. But the most powerful moment came when Mrs. Watson took the stand. The mother of the little girl Liam had locked in the basement during a birthday party. We were paid to keep quiet, she admitted, her voice shaking. We signed documents and accepted money because we were told it would be better for our daughter to move on. I've regretted it every day since. Judge Harlow leaned forward. What made you decide to come forward now, Mrs. Watson? She looked directly at me. Because I read that blog post. I recognized the situation immediately. I couldn't let another child go through what my daughter did, knowing I could have spoken up sooner. Throughout the morning, the Faulkners' carefully constructed facade continued to crumble. Teachers from Ella's school testified to the behavioral changes they'd observed following weekends with her father's family. The Guardian ad litem presented her report, recommending that Ella have no unsupervised contact with Liam and only limited, monitored visits with her father, until he acknowledged the seriousness of the situation. Just before the lunch recess, the mystery woman who had slipped into the courtroom earlier approached Rachel and whispered something to her. Rachel's eyes widened and she immediately requested a brief conference with the judge. When proceedings resumed, Judge Harlow made an announcement. The court has been presented with additional evidence that requires review. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary order. Ella Morgan is to have no contact with Liam Whitmore or Margaret. Supervised visitation only with Ethan Whitmore. At the Family Resource Center, only minutes after the hearing adjourned, we gathered our things to leave. I finally asked Rachel about the mystery woman. That, she said with a small smile, was Deborah Dunning, Judith's personal assistant for the last 8 years. She paused, letting that sink in. She has copies of emails between Judith and the headmaster of Liam's private school regarding 3 separate incidents of aggression against classmates. Incidents that were handled quietly, after generous donations to the school's building fund. She's willing to testify? I asked, stunned. Tomorrow morning, Rachel confirmed. She said she couldn't live with herself anymore after seeing the security footage on the news last night. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, alerted by the viral blog post and the subsequent news coverage. Judith brushed past them with a terse, no comment, while Ethan ducked into a waiting car. I hesitated, unsure how to handle the attention. Rachel guided me through it with a simple, steadying statement. We're grateful the court is giving this matter the serious attention it deserves. Our only concern is the welfare of a child who deserves to feel safe with all family members. That evening, I sat with Ella on our back porch swing, watching fireflies emerge in the growing dusk. I'd explained in age-appropriate terms what had happened in court. Does this mean I never have to see Liam again? She asked, her small voice hopeful. I don't know yet, sweetheart. But I promise you won't be alone with him ever again. She leaned against me, her body relaxing for the first time in weeks. I told Ms. Laura what was happening once, she confessed. She said I should tell you. But I was scared. Scared of what, honey? That no one would believe me. Grandma Judith always says I make things up. I hugged her close. I believe you, Ella. I will always believe you. The next morning, Deborah Dunning's testimony unfolded with devastating clarity. I watched the phoner's lawyer grow increasingly desperate, objecting repeatedly, questioning her motives, even implying she had stolen private correspondence. But each tactic only made Judge Harlow's expression grow sterner. By noon, the evidence was overwhelming. Judge Harlow called a brief recess before delivering her ruling. In the hallway, to my surprise, Ethan approached me alone. Claire, he began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. I need to save it, I interrupted. You had years to listen to Ella. Years to protect her. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected him. There's a difference. His shoulders sagged. For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd once loved before his family's influence had corrupted him completely. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now, I said, you decide what kind of father you want to be. One who protects his daughter, or one who protects his mother's pride. When court resumed, Judge Harlow's ruling was decisive. Full temporary custody was granted to me, with Ethan allowed only supervised visitation after completing parenting classes and acknowledging the abuse. Judith and Liam were subject to a no-contact order, pending Liam's completion of an intensive therapeutic program. This court takes the safety of children extremely seriously, Judge Harlow stated. The evidence presents a disturbing pattern, not just of a child's aggression, but of adults enabling and normalizing harm. This ends today. As we left the courthouse, the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the steps. Rachel hugged me tightly. This is just the beginning, she whispered. But it's a good beginning. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with notifications. The story had exploded beyond our small town, picked up by national outlets, focusing on how wealth and power can shield abusers. I turned off my phone, unwilling to let the spotlight distract from what mattered most. My daughter was safe. And for the first time in years, she knew without doubt that her voice had been heard. 3 months after Judge Harlow's ruling, autumn had returned to Oregon, painting the landscape in fiery hues that matched the transformation in our lives. Ella and I sat in Dr. Emily's office for what would be our final required session under the court's orders. I'd like to hear from both of you about the changes you've experienced, Dr. Emily said, her kind eyes moving between us. Ella, now more confident in expressing herself, spoke first. I don't have bad dreams anymore. And I started raising my hand in class again. That's wonderful. Dr. Emily smiled. What about at home? Mom and I have pizza and movie nights on Fridays. And I'm taking art classes on Saturdays. Her face brightened. I drew a whole comic book about a girl superhero who can turn invisible, but decides to be seen. My heart swelled with pride at the progress she'd made. When it was my turn, I struggled to articulate the profound shift in our lives. Everything's different, I said finally. It's like we've both been holding our breath for years, and now we can exhale. Dr. Emily nodded. That's a common feeling after leaving an abusive dynamic. The body literally relaxes from a state of constant vigilance. After our session, we walked to a nearby cafe, a new tradition we'd established to mark these milestones. As Ella enjoyed her hot chocolate, I checked my emails and found one from Rachel. Final custody arrangement approved. Full legal and physical custody granted to you. Ethan declined his visitation rights. I felt a complex wave of emotions. Relief primarily, but also sadness for Ella. Despite everything, Ethan was still her father. And his choice to step away rather than do the work to be in her life would leave scars too. Life would leave its own scar. Everything okay, Mom? Ella asked, a chocolate mustache adorning her upper lip. I smiled, pushing the complicated adult matters aside. Everything's great. In fact, I think this calls for an extra cookie. While Ella was preoccupied with her treat, I quickly checked the news on my phone. The Fawner saga continued to unfold in the public eye. Though our names remained protected through court orders, Judith had stepped down from her charitable board positions, citing family health matters. Ethan had taken a leave of absence from the family firm. Most significantly, 3 more families had come forward with similar experiences involving Liam, prompted by the Watson family's courage. But these larger repercussions felt distant from our daily reality. Our focus remained on healing and rebuilding. Ella had started writing poetry in her language arts class, simple verses about bravery and truth that her teacher, Ms. Laura, particularly encouraged. She has a natural gift for expressing complex emotions, Ms. Laura told me during a parent-teacher conference. I think it's helping her process everything. My own work had evolved too. What began as simple documentation of our journey had grown into a blog with a modest but engaged following. I wrote about recognizing gaslighting in family dynamics, supporting children through trauma, and navigating a legal system that often favored those with resources. Each post sparked conversations that reinforced what Rachel had told me from the beginning. We were far from alone. One crisp October evening, as I worked on illustrations while Ella completed her homework at the kitchen table, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, clutching a bottle of wine and wearing an uncharacteristically jubilant expression. We need to celebrate, she announced, stepping inside. After settling Ella with her favorite movie in the living room, Rachel explained her excitement. The Watson case is going to trial. No settlement. No NDAs. They're going all the way. I thought they already settled years ago, I said, confused. They did. But after everything that happened with your case, Mrs. Watson hired me to challenge the legality of the confidentiality agreement, on the grounds that it concealed ongoing danger to other children. Rachel's eyes sparkled. The judge agreed. The original settlement is nullified. The implications were enormous. Without the protection of secrecy, the Fawner's systematic cover-ups would be exposed in open court. There's more, Rachel continued. I've been offered a partnership at the firm. They want me to head a new division focused exclusively on child advocacy cases. I hugged her tightly. No one deserves it more. You changed our lives. No, she corrected gently. You changed our lives. I just helped with the legal parts. The following week brought news that Liam had been enrolled in a specialized boarding school in Vermont, known for its therapeutic approach to children with behavioral issues. According to Deborah Dunning, who had maintained contact with Rachel, the decision came after an incident during a family therapy session where Liam became violent when confronted about his actions. It should have happened years ago, Deborah told us over coffee. But Judith couldn't bear the thought of anyone seeing her golden boy as flawed. I felt no satisfaction in Liam's struggles, only hope. Hope that he would finally receive the intervention he needed before his patterns became permanently entrenched. He was, after all, still a child shaped by the dysfunctional adults around him. In late November, Ella's teacher entered her poem, I'm Not Sorry, into a statewide contest for elementary students. When the email arrived announcing she'd won first place in her age group, Ella danced around our kitchen, her joy infectious. They want to publish it in a real book, Mom, she exclaimed, with other kids' poems. The poem was simple but powerful, 8 lines about finding her voice and refusing to apologize for taking up space in the world. Reading it, I saw not just healing but transformation. Ella wasn't merely recovering from trauma, she was forging it into something beautiful and strong. The awards ceremony was scheduled for December at the state capitol. As we made plans to attend, I received an unexpected email from Ethan, the first direct communication since he declined his visitation rights. I've been in therapy. I'm beginning to understand how much damage my family's dynamics have caused. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm finally facing the truth. Congratulations to Ella on her poetry award. She deserves every good thing. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure what place, if any, Ethan should have in our lives moving forward. That decision would require careful consideration of Ella's needs above all else. The day before the poetry ceremony, a heavy envelope arrived from Rachel's office. Inside was the final court order, officially documenting the termination of the Faulkners' access to Ella. Along with it, a personal note from Judge Harlow. Your courage has already protected other children. Never doubt that speaking up was the right choice. That night, as I tucked Ella into bed, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Mom, is Liam ever going to say sorry for hurting me? I sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer truthfully while honoring her need for closure. I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people aren't ready to face the wrong things they've done. She nodded thoughtfully. That's okay. I don't need a sorry. Anymore. I know it wasn't my fault. I kissed Ella's forehead, marveling at her quiet wisdom. That's right. It was never your fault. As she drifted off to sleep, I stood in her doorway, watching her peaceful face. The journey had been brutal. But the outcome, this child, safe and confident in her worth, was worth every battle. The next morning, as we prepared for the poetry ceremony, I received a text from Deborah. Judith announced retirement today. Stepping down from the family business completely. The empire is crumbling. I felt no triumph. Only relief that the power that had once seemed so insurmountable had finally met its limits. Justice hadn't come in the form of punishment, but in the restoration of truth and the protection of the vulnerable. At the ceremony, Ella stood tall at the microphone, her voice clear as she read her poem to the audience. Looking at her, brave, resilient, and newly confident, I realized we had both been transformed. The quiet mother who once doubted her instincts had found her voice alongside her daughter. As we drove home through the winter twilight, Ella clutched her award certificate and yawned. I'm proud of us, Mom, she said sleepily. Me too, baby, I whispered. Me too. Spring arrived with gentle persistence, coaxing new growth from winter-hardened ground. In the 6 months since Ella's poetry award, our lives had settled into a rhythm that felt both ordinary and miraculous. After the turbulence we'd weathered, even stillness felt sacred. I stood at my easel by the window, adding final touches to an illustration of a young girl releasing paper lanterns into a night sky. The piece was part of a children's book about finding courage, my first major project since refocusing my career. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Check your email. Urgent but good. I smiled, accustomed to my friend's enthusiastic communication style. Since becoming a partner at her firm, Rachel had channeled her formidable energy into building the child advocacy division into a force within the regional legal community. I opened the email. A formal invitation. Keynote speaker request. Pacific Northwest Conference on Emotional Abuse and Protective Parenting. They want me to speak? I murmured, disbelieving. My blog had grown beyond my wildest expectations, evolving from personal catharsis into a vital resource for parents navigating similar waters. The comment section had become a community, a circle of voices supporting one another through gaslighting, bullying, and the complexities of legal systems meant to protect children. Still, speaking at a professional conference felt like a leap into unknown territory. Before I could spiral too far into doubt, Ella burst through the front door, backpack bouncing, a wide smile lighting up her face. Mom, Ms. Laura says they're publishing my poem in a real literary journal. Not just a contest book, a real one. The kind that goes to libraries. I set aside my own news to celebrate hers. That's incredible, honey. Which poem? I'm not sorry, she said proudly. And they want me to write a little paragraph about what inspired it. We sat at the kitchen table, notebooks and colored pens spread out. Our tradition for important writing projects. Together, we worked on her author's statement. At 10 years old, her birthday had passed in January, Ella had developed a thoughtfulness that sometimes caught me off guard. I want to say it's for kids who get told to be quiet, she said, chewing her pencil eraser. But I don't want to sound mad. You can be truthful without being angry, I suggested. What's the most important thing you learned? She considered this. That feeling bad when someone hurts you doesn't mean you did something wrong. Her simple wisdom brought tears to my eyes. That's perfect, Ella. Right. Exactly that. Later that evening, after Ella was asleep, I called Rachel to discuss the conference invitation. You have to do it, she insisted. Your perspective is unique. You're not a therapist or a lawyer. You're a mother who found her way through the maze. People need to hear that voice. What would I even say? I asked, doubt creeping in. The truth, Rachel replied simply. Just like you've been doing all along. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from a publishing agent who had discovered my blog. You're writing on family dynamics and healing. It resonates deeply with readers, she wrote. I believe there's a book here that could help countless families. Would you consider a proposal? The opportunities arriving now seem surreal compared to where we'd been a year earlier, isolated, doubted, and fighting a system that favored the powerful. Yet each step had followed naturally from the one before. The documentation that became a blog. The blog that found an audience. The audience that created community. I accepted both the speaking engagement and the book proposal, sensing that our experience had a purpose beyond our own healing. If our story could illuminate the path for even one family trapped in similar darkness, the pain would transform into something meaningful. Spring melted into summer, and with it came an unexpected email from Ethan. He had completed intensive therapy and was requesting a monitored meeting, not with Ella, but with me. I understand if you refuse, he wrote. But I have things I need to say for my own accountability if nothing else. After consulting with Dr. Emily, I agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop downtown. The man who arrived was both familiar and unrecognizable. Ethan's features, yes, but without the arrogance and defensiveness that had once defined him. Thank you for coming, he said, hands wrapped around his coffee mug. I've been working through a lot in therapy. Understanding how my mother's influence shaped my behavior, my values. My failure as a father and a husband. I waited, neither encouraging nor discouraging his confession. I should have protected Ella, he continued. I should have stood up to my mother years ago, not just about Liam, but about how she treated you. How she taught me to treat you. He met my eyes directly. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. I just want you to know. I finally see the truth. What about Liam? I asked. Have you had any contact with him? Ethan nodded. He's still at the therapeutic school. His counselors say he's making progress, but it's slow. Years of being told his behavior was acceptable created deep patterns. He paused. I visit him monthly. I'm trying to model something different than what my mother showed him. As we talked, I realized Ethan was genuinely changed, not completely healed, but awakened to truths he'd spent a lifetime denying. Still, when he cautiously asked about seeing Ella again, I was clear. Being a father isn't genetic, Ethan. It's earned through consistent care and protection. If you want a relationship with Ella someday, you'll need to prove you've truly changed. Over time. He accepted this without argument, perhaps the most convincing evidence of his transformation. By late summer, my illustration work had taken a new direction. The emotional depth of our journey had infused my art with authenticity, and clients responded to it. I was commissioned to create a series of images for a children's hospital, scenes of courage, hope, and healing that would decorate the walls of pediatric wards. Ella, too, was flourishing. She had begun volunteering at a community art center, helping younger children with their projects while continuing to develop her own skills. Her first mural, a collaborative piece with other young artists, depicted a girl holding a glowing lantern that illuminated a path through a dark forest. When the director asked about the symbolism, Ella explained, "Sometimes you have to make your own light to find your way out." The Child Advocacy Center where Ella had received therapy invited me to join their parent advisory board. There, I helped shape programs for families navigating the aftermath of abuse. Working alongside professionals who had once guided us through our darkest days felt like completing a circle from help to helper. In September, I received word that Margaret had been quietly removed from the boards of several prominent family foundations, following the public settlement of the Watson lawsuit. The family's carefully constructed facade of philanthropic virtue had crumbled under the weight of revealed truth. I took no pleasure in their downfall, but I celebrated the cultural shift it represented. Powerful families could no longer count on silence and intimidation to shield them from consequences. The week before my keynote speech at the conference, I received a surprising invitation from Deborah Dunning. She had left the Faulkner's employment and accepted a position with a nonprofit focused on family healing, ironically, an organization once heavily funded by Judith's donations. They need someone who understands how abuse can hide behind privilege, she explained over coffee. Lunch was over and I knew I needed to use what I'd witnessed for something good. The conference itself was both terrifying and exhilarating. Standing before a room of therapists, lawyers, judges, and parents, I shared our story, not as victims, but as witnesses to a truth larger than ourselves. That protecting children requires adults willing to stand firm against powerful systems designed to maintain the status quo. The most dangerous words I ever heard, I told the audience, were, "She provoked him. She apologized for upsetting him." Those words taught my daughter that her pain was less important than a boy's anger. That being hurt was her fault. I paused, letting the truth settle in. It took every ounce of courage I had to say, "No more." The standing ovation that followed was overwhelming. But it was the conversations afterward, quiet, tearful, hopeful, with parents who saw their own struggles reflected in ours, that truly mattered. One evening in late October, exactly 1 year after Judge Harlow's final ruling, Ella asked if we could go stargazing. We drove to a quiet spot outside town, spread a blanket on the grass, and lay back to watch the vast canopy of stars emerge. After a long, comfortable silence, Ella spoke. "Do you ever think about them? Grandma Judith and Dad and Liam?" "Yeah. Sometimes," I admitted. "I hope they're healing in their own ways." She nodded thoughtfully. "Ms. Laura says holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to get sick." I smiled in the darkness. "That's pretty wise." "I'm not angry anymore," she said. I don't know. Glad we're here instead of there." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Me too." As shooting stars streaked across the October sky, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this peaceful moment. From the frightened mother who once doubted her own perceptions, to the woman who had found her voice by defending her child's right to safety and truth. It hadn't been about revenge, or even justice in the conventional sense. It had been about restoration, rebuilding what had been broken, reclaiming what had been stolen, the right to say no, the courage to be believed, the freedom to heal. Beside me, Ella pointed excitedly at a particularly brilliant meteor. Her profile in the starlight showed a confidence that hadn't existed a year ago. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew with bone-deep certainty that she would face them standing tall. Never again apologizing for taking up space in the world. "Make a wish," I whispered. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a smile. "Already did." I didn't ask what she'd wished for. Some things don't need to be spoken aloud to be perfectly understood. As we packed up our blanket and headed home, Ella hummed softly beside me, the tune from a song she'd been working on in music class. Something about finding light in darkness. The night sky stretched endlessly above us, stars illuminating the road ahead. They had once told her to say sorry for being hurt, but I had taught her never to be sorry for speaking up. And in that truth, we had both found our way forward. One brave step at a time. When was the last time you stayed silent to keep the peace, only to realize your voice was the very weapon you needed? If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of quiet strength finding its roar. And that's the thing about betrayal, sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's healing. It's living a life so full of peace, strength, and truth that the people who tried to break you are left behind, still spinning their lies. If you're carrying hurt, set boundaries. Grow. Let go with grace. You deserve more than survival, you deserve joy. If you've lived through your own story of betrayal or quiet revenge, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments and let's build a space for truth, healing, and strength. So tell me, what did rising above look like for you?